My name is Melissa Rohan. I am the president of Waterfront Academy, the founder as well. This school we started back in 2013, so we've been around for over 10 years. We've always been dual language. So this is something that I have a lot of experience with, and I've been working with Montessori teachers and administrators across the world to find out what are some of the best practices across other Montessori schools. And so that's where a lot of this comes from, a lot of this information. So let me go ahead and get to the next part here. So we'll gain some insights on dual language acquisition by age group. In Montessori, we do group all of the children based on some similar characteristics they have in development. And so we will look at how language learning happens at each of those age groups. We'll learn strategies to support bilingualism or multilingualism at home. And we'll explore activities and resources for each developmental stage. The overview of developmental stages. So as I mentioned, there's infancy. So Dr. Montessori, there's like a diagram and it looks like so. And infancy is 6 years, and at the top, it like peaks at 3, so 0 to 3, and then 3 to 6. So usually when we're talking about infancy, nowadays we would talk about that 0 to 3, infants and toddlers, and then preschool 3 to 6 age group. And that group is our absorbent mind. Elementary 6 to 12, that's our reasoning mind, and adolescence, which is 12 and older. And the mind really kind of goes and develops all the way through the age of 24, 25. So the absorbent mind, which is that 6 and under, the children are absorbing everything, not just language, everything. Even starting in utero, they are listening to different intonations. They're listening to expressions. They'll understand before they speak. I'm sure if you learn another language, you understand the language before you can speak it. The same goes for our children, and we can see some markers of that as well. In observation of the children, they may not know how to or feel comfortable yet to use some of the words in the target language, but they will talk, or they will hear, and they will understand that target language. And they're absorbing it and they're learning it. And that's really on that, well, the whole 0 to 6. When you look at that 3 to 6 age range, that's when we're really growing the vocabulary and the comprehension part of this area, or this grouping. So some of the big key tips is to speak in both languages constantly. And it only works in a human-to-human connection. So if you want your child, for example, to learn Japanese, you can't put a Japanese recording on and expect the child to learn Japanese that way. There has to be some kind of a human-human connection, or on an app or things like that. It simply isn't going to work. Now, if you are already speaking Japanese to your child, and then you have in supplement a video or an app or what have you in that target language, that is different. But you can't bring in this other language and not have any human-to-human contact. Some ways to make this interesting for a child in that 6 to younger age group is through some songs and rhymes, and using the hands. When a lot of those children's songs will have like hand motions that go along with it, and that's really helpful because you're using more of the brain and you're making it fun. and you've got the gross and fine motor skills that you're working on. It's kind of doing a lot at once. So if you use the songs or the rhymes, go ahead and make sure that they have some kind of hand movement, or create your own hand movements or body movements or what have you to go along with the song. And when you're reading in a book, again, if you're reading in a language that is left to right, top to down, use your finger to follow along, or if it's in a different pattern, use your finger to follow along, however that looks like. And create a language-rich environment. I remember when I had my own children, and they were very young, I remember I knew how important it was to have a language-rich environment. It was extremely uncomfortable for me, though, to speak in that other language, or any language, just to what felt like nothingness, and I would rather just keep all my words in my head, but I did. And so you have to use, so if you're at the grocery store, I need bananas, and you say that out loud, and the child is right there listening to you about bananas and oranges and milk and whatever you're putting into your cart. Or if you're in the home, I'm going to do laundry. Let's go do laundry together. I'm going to sort the clothes. I'm going to put them in the washer. I'm going to put the laundry soap in. You have to narrate and use a lot of words so that your child can hear and be a part of that language-rich environment. Also, again, the songs and the book reading and all of those things are really helping out. They're helping the child learn the different languages. So it's not just in one language, it's in all languages. Encourage storytelling and role playing. Those are really important as well. As humans, that's an important part of learning, is through stories. And so getting a child started on the stories is very important for communication and for learning and for teaching and understanding. So we'll go ahead and move on. The reasoning mind is from 6 to 12. And the children at this age, so the children in 0 to 6 will ask why, because they want you to use your words, and they watch your mouth as you're speaking, because they want to learn language. The reasoning mind child will ask why, because they really want to understand the world, excuse me. And so they ask a lot of questions, and they're very interested in the smallest thing and the biggest thing and this thing and that thing, the thing in the past and the thing that will happen in the future. They're very, very interested. And so the way that you can use a reasoning mind child, the child in this age group, is so when they're younger, they're just putting into these buckets words for different things. So you could have, a cell phone, or a mobile phone, or a cellular, or, and all of those things would mean that object. Whereas in the reasoning mind, they're starting to thin out some of the synapses that were created in the under 6 age developmental range. And so they are more into translating. This is when they start doing more translating work. And so giving them large vocab lists is an amazing thing to do. Start working with reading and writing. They're very interested in this. Playing games. Oh my goodness, their sense of humor is amazing. And so doing games, jokes. If you wanted to do songs, they are very interested in songs as well at this age. But they're not going to be as interested in the children's songs. They are going to be more interested in pop type songs, pop type songs that are appropriate for this age group. You have to make sure that they're not inappropriate. They're in they do want to do poems in another language, or they want to in other languages or in the target language, or write in the other language. I think it's very fun and interesting and cool. So this is a really interesting age group. And then, like, after you read something, let's say in and this is in any language, after you read something, doing the reading comprehension, what did you learn? What do you think is going to happen next? What do you want to happen next? Those types of questions are really important, and they're very well received as well. They like making up different ideas of what they've heard, or more along the lines of what will happen. They like to make up different things that might happen after reading a page or a paragraph of a story or an article. Okay. The social mind is what we call the 12 and older. So this is an interesting time in the child's development, because at this point in their life, they in a lot of ways mimic infancy, in that they a lot is going on physically. Their body is changing. The structure of their brain is changing. Their hormones are changing. So at this point in their life, they are they're very tired. They sleep a lot. You always hear jokes about, the tired teenager that sleeps until, ungodly hours, and etc. There's a reason for that, right? And for any child that's learning more than one language, especially at the very beginning, you learn the other languages in your sleep. And so sleep is extremely important. So for the social mind, the child that's 12 and older, that adolescent, they need a lot of sleep. And there's going to be a lot of things that look very similar to infancy, or that 6 and younger age group. But they're very social. And I'm sure, again, these are things that there's a lot of jokes about regarding adolescence and how important their friends are and their friend groups are at this age. And there's a reason for that, because it is extremely important at this point in their lives. And so at this point in their lives, I wouldn't necessarily introduce a new language with an expectation that that's not appropriate, given how much is going on in that child's body. So introducing a new language is still very fine and a really great idea. I would just, expectations, I would probably pare them back. But they're very interested. If they have had the language the whole time, then you're looking at really diving into refining the language skills and practice applications. You can do really fun things where one person says something in one language, and then you translate it and then respond to it in that language, and then the other person does the same thing. Or one person says something kind of like telephone, where one person says something in a language, and then I understand it and will say it in a different language to the next person, and then get that train going. So there's a lot of fun ways that are social, and they're practicing the multiple languages, watching movies, reading books. These are all great things to do for this age group. Especially with watching movies, we wouldn't necessarily recommend that or suggest that for a younger age, but at this age, it's 100% appropriate. Again, given that the movie that they're watching is appropriate for the child and the age. Um, and then and for me, I would actually say that, consider cultural immersion experiences, but that's also for younger ages as well. But what's interesting about this age is that they can really participate in the experience in a different way. And I would encourage that. So at this age, I also talk to parents a lot about getting the child to plan these experiences, and so that there's a lot more buy-in to it. So that's why I put it here, but really it would be appropriate for any age. Younger. So consistency and patience is extremely important when you're talking about multiple languages. And I think that isn't just true for children. I think it's true as adults as well. Because I think we all forget how much courage is needed to speak a different language. And we also, if in order to speak a language, we need to practice that language. So if we ever stop practicing it, our brain is going to try and conserve energy. And so it's going to thin out those synapses with the other language. You can always bring it back. It's going to be a hard mountain to climb. So just being consistent and never not backing down, but never slowing down or stopping, just being consistent at learning the target language, and maintaining it as well. And then again, patience, because it does take, especially learning a new language, it does take a lot of courage to use that language, and showing that grace is really important. So generally speaking, when I have a student who's learning a new language, I won't edit them. They'll figure it out that they're saying it wrong eventually, but I won't say, no, you did it wrong. That will never come out of my mouth. I might say something like, if they said something wrong, I would repeat it so they can hear it the right way. And sometimes they'll recognize that they said it wrong, and sometimes they won't recognize that they've said it wrong. And I will, so they'll say something to me, and in agreement, I will repeat whatever they said to me the correct way. And so at home, making it just part of home life, there's nothing unusual about it, or making it appear like it's not intentional, even though it is extremely intentional, would be part of that as well. Adapting to individual learning styles and progress at your child's pace. So this is an extremely important thing. Some children are obsessed with, I've seen so many different things that they've obsessed with. For example, the color red. So then I might grab a bunch of different materials that are red, and then we're going to learn everything that is red, like the fire truck, or I don't know, the apple, all of these red things, and we'll go with that, right? Because those are meaningful to that particular child. We had another child who was obsessed with dinosaurs, so we had a whole diorama of dinosaurs, and obviously, you can only do so much with dinosaurs, but dinosaurs had mountains and trees and dirt and leaves and all of those things. So you can bring in all of these different things that are of interest of that particular child. And I would only push the child as much as a child is willing to be pushed. I wouldn't make the child feel bad if they're not on my pace, or a pace that I had arbitrarily created for the child. It's just the child's journey. It's not a race to the finish line. And some children, they're just, again, it takes a lot of courage. And so they're not ready yet. And once they are ready, because they've been listening to all of this and they've been understanding all of it, that like it's going to happen super quick when they're ready and they feel courageous and comfortable. So, so just keeping that in mind when it comes to reading, and this is a pro tip for any language, is that when you give a child a book to read, to assess whether or not it is on level for the child, I would just pull out a random page and have the child read it out loud to me. And if there's 5 or more words that the child stumbles on, it's too challenging. And I would go back and pick a different book. Sometimes the child, like they'll miss 5 words, but the child really wants to read it. And I will have a conversation with the child and say, look, like we can try and find another book about the same subject area that's probably better for you. And then we can come back to this book. Or you can go ahead and try. And if you don't want to continue, that is really okay. We can set it aside and we can go and find a different book to read. So if it's 5 words, I might give them a little bit of a choice, but if it's 6 or more, it's too hard for them at the moment. Of course, they will get there eventually. When they do, I'm happy to share that book with them, and then it's kind of exciting when that happens for them as well. Creating a supportive environment that encourages language use. So one thing that we don't always think about is the fact that our language, the area in our brain where our language pretty much resides, is right there next to where emotions resides. And so there's a deep connection between emotion and language. And so if as soon as the target language has like bad like associations, the child isn't going to want to learn that language. It'll be very hard for that to happen. So a lot of times I have seen in my personal life a parent who uses the target language as a secret way of editing behavior of the child. Well, then the child has a negative association with that language, and it will be an uphill battle trying to get the child to learn that language and use that language, because the only real way to learn the language is by using the language. And if the child isn't going to use the language, it's going to be really, really hard. So just keeping in mind that the environment in that target language needs to be loving and supportive, to, again, encourage and make the child feel safe in that language. And because of, especially since how closely those two parts of the brain reside and intertwine with each other. Let's see. So there are a couple of books that I love, and I should have put them right here because I see them over there. So what I will do is I'll go ahead and email the books that I recommend with, I can give you a link to Amazon as well, so there's no question. It really kind of talks at length on different strategies for multiple language learning with children. And I think that like the biggest tip I can say is by keeping it consistent, making sure that it's always a positive thing to do, even by creating incentives for the target language at home and out and about. So, maybe doing like a special night with the child, and instead of going to an English movie, maybe going to see the movie in Spanish or in the target language. or going to a grocery store or restaurant where they predominantly speak that target language, or I'm trying to think of other, just making it fun and exciting and rewarding to use the target language. Okay. So thank you for coming to this virtual workshop. And again, if you have any questions regarding tips or things that you didn't understand, I'm happy to answer those questions. I'm going to turn off the recording, but you can always send me an email as well. You've got my email address now. And if there's anything I can do, let me know on this topic or others.